The diner was unusually quiet that rainy night. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the faint scent of wet asphalt drifting in every time the door opened. Amelia, a 21-year-old waitress, wiped down the counter for the 5th time, not because it was dirty, but because it distracted her from the emptiness of her stomach. She hadn't eaten a full meal in 2 days. She had grown used to surviving on leftovers from the diner, sometimes scraping together just enough to pack something home for her younger brother Ethan. That night, a man walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying an air of wealth and authority that clashed with the small town diner's modest setting. His suit was tailored to perfection, and even the rain that had soaked through his hair seemed to fall respectfully around him. The regulars turned their heads, whispering in low tones, because this wasn't the kind of man you saw in a place like this. Amelia, weary but professional, grabbed a menu and walked toward him with her practiced smile. But before she could even set the menu down, something on his chest caught her eye. A golden locket, old and worn, but polished enough to suggest it was cherished deeply. Her heart nearly stopped. She froze mid-step, her throat tightening. That locket. She had seen it before. She had seen it every night in her mother's old photographs. The mother she had lost when she was just a child. A tremor ran through her fingers as the words escaped her lips before she could control them.
That's my mom!
The man, who had just taken off his jacket, stiffened. His eyes darted to her, wide with disbelief. For a moment silence hung between them, broken only by the distant hum of the rain. Then, the billionaire, known to the world as Alexander Grant, one of the wealthiest men in the state, slowly unclasped the locket, his hands trembling. He opened it, revealing a small, faded photograph of a young woman smiling, the same face Amelia had grown up staring at on her bedroom wall. His eyes glistened as his lips quivered. Seconds later, he broke down in tears, burying his face in his palms right there in the middle of the diner. If you're already hooked by this shocking twist, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Exposed Tales for more powerful stories that uncover hidden truths and emotional journeys. The customers sat in stunned silence, not sure what they were witnessing. Amelia, her own tears threatening to spill, dropped into the booth across from him. How do you have this?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Alexander struggled to compose himself. She was my first love," he said hoarsely. "Your mother, Clara, she was everything to me. But her parents, they didn't want her with me. I was just starting out then, broke, chasing dreams. They forced her away, and by the time I made something of myself, she was gone. I never even knew she had a daughter." Amelia sat frozen. The mother she barely remembered, who had died of illness when Amelia was only 7, had been part of this man's buried past. Questions flooded her mind, colliding with years of pain, poverty, and unanswered prayers. Life had been cruel to Amelia. After her mother's passing, her father had vanished, leaving her to care for her little brother. At 16, she dropped out of school to work full-time at the diner. Every penny went to rent and Ethan's education. She had no dreams left for herself, only survival. And now, here sat a billionaire crying over the same woman who had been Amelia's world. Alexander reached for Amelia's hands across the table. "Tell me about her," he begged. His voice carried desperation, as though hearing about Clara might bring her back to life. Amelia recounted everything she remembered. The lullabies, the way her mother's laughter could light up even their darkest days, and how she had whispered hope into Amelia's ears even as sickness took her away. Both of them wept openly. The diner's manager gave Amelia a sympathetic nod, letting her take the rest of the night off to sit with the stranger who, in some unfathomable way, was tied to her soul. But the truth wasn't enough to erase the years of pain. Amelia's life was still full of struggles. She couldn't afford Ethan's college tuition. Debt collectors called almost every week, and no matter how much she worked, it felt like the world was against her. Alexander, sensing the unspoken weight in her life, began showing up at the diner often. Each time he ordered little but stayed long, talking with Amelia, learning about her challenges, listening to stories about Ethan, and quietly admiring her strength. Yet Amelia struggled to trust him. The world had shown her cruelty whenever she dared to hope. People had taken advantage of her before, promising help but leaving her broken. She feared Alexander was just another storm she couldn't weather. One evening, after weeks of this fragile bond forming, Ethan stormed into the diner, eyes red from crying. "They're going to kick us out, Amy," he said, holding a notice from their landlord. "We're 3 months behind on rent." Amelia's world crashed again. She excused herself from Alexander and hugged her brother, promising they would figure it out. But in truth, she had no idea how. That night, as Alexander watched the siblings cry together, something inside him broke. He had built empires, acquired companies, and donated millions to strangers. Yet here sat the daughter of the only woman he had ever loved, living in poverty, working herself to the bone, and still finding the strength to care for her brother. He realized this wasn't just a coincidence. This was fate giving him a second chance, not with Clara, but with her children. The next morning, Amelia woke up to a knock at their small apartment door. Standing there was Alexander, holding an envelope. "Don't refuse this," he said firmly. Inside was a check large enough to clear their debts, pay Ethan's tuition, and give Amelia breathing room for the first time in her life. She shook her head, tears flooding her eyes. "I can't take this. We're not charity cases." Alexander's voice softened. "You're not charity. You're family. Clara may be gone, but you're a piece of her, and I won't fail her again." Amelia broke down, hugging him tightly. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in hope again. Over time, Alexander became more than a benefactor. He became a father figure Amelia had never known and a mentor for Ethan. He didn't just give them money, he gave them guidance, love, and protection. With his help, Amelia returned to school to pursue her long-buried dream of becoming a teacher, while Ethan excelled in college. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Gossip spread when people discovered Amelia's connection to Alexander. Some accused her of manipulating him for money. Old business rivals of Alexander tried to use the connection to tarnish his reputation. There were moments Amelia wanted to hide, to retreat back into the shadows. But Alexander stood beside her through every storm, reminding her that family wasn't defined by blood, but by love and loyalty. Years later, as Amelia stood on a stage, graduating with honors, she spotted Alexander in the crowd, his eyes glistening with pride. She realized then that her mother's love hadn't left her. It had simply found its way back through him. If this emotional journey touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Exposed Tales. Your support helps us share more stories of resilience, hidden truths, and powerful connections. Amelia's life had begun in hardship and loneliness, but destiny had brought her the family she thought she lost forever. And as Alexander watched her place her graduation cap on Ethan's head in a playful gesture, he whispered to himself, "Clara, I kept my promise." The story of a poor waitress and a billionaire's locket was no longer about loss. It was about redemption, second chances, and the unbreakable bond of love that survives even death.